The wait for the goods and services tax has got longer. The government rules out a special session of Parliament as the Congress remains adamant in its opposition. The April 1, 2016 deadline is under threat.
Telecom companies get more flexibility with their spectrum. Cabinet allows trading of Airwaves with a 45-day notice and a 1% transaction fee. Telecom stocks rally in trade.
In a bid to combat India's appetite for gold, the Cabinet announces the gold monetization scheme and gold bonds. The RBI will issue the bonds and the centre will set the interest rates from time to time. A reserve fund will be created to mitigate the risk out of price fluctuation.
Shares in Tokyo post their biggest single-day gain in 7 years, lifting sentiment across Asia. The Wall Street rallies for the second day running. The Nifty reclaims the 7,800 mark. Shares across US and Europe also rally.
The biggest challenge the government has is basically to have its vision aligned with bureaucratic implementation.
The best person in India today to decide when should the RBI reduce the rate of interest is today, not always, the present governor of the Reserve Bank of India.
A lukewarm response from the industry 24 hours after the Prime Minister urged India Inc. to take risks and invest. The RBI maintains its accommodative stance, says the Deputy RBI Governor, but even a rate cut may not be enough, say industry leaders.
India's largest private shipbuilding company is staring at a takeover. Lenders issue an ultimatum to ABG Shipyard. Will initiate a takeover if they fail to find an investor within 30 days. That's an exclusive.
A resounding victory for magazine Money Life against the National Stock Exchange. The Bombay High Court dismisses the 100 crore rupee defamation case and slaps NSE with a 50 lakh rupee penalty. Says the court cannot be treated as a playground.
Maggi will be back by the end of this year, says Nestle India's MD Suresh Narayanan. Plans more ramp up and ad spends to resurrect the brand. That's an exclusive.
The Election Commission sounds the poll bugle in Bihar. The 5 phase elections will start from the 12th of October and results will be out on the 8th of November.
Also on the show, Tamil Nadu rolls out the red carpet for investors. The state claims it will attract 1 lakh crore rupees in investments on day 1 of the global summit.
And the summer Davos in China's Dalian kicks off amid slowing economy and a sputtering stock market. A ground report coming up.
We are now at a stage where we have...
I would like 2,500 crores of investment I would like to make here.
Any timeline?
As soon as we keep getting permission.
From what little I have come to understand about how the RBI and this governor operate, they will make haste slowly.
If you carefully read the last monetary policy statement, it maintains that RBI is continuing with its accommodative stance. The biggest challenge the government has is basically to have its vision aligned with bureaucratic implementation.
The best person in India today to decide when should the RBI reduce the rate of interest is today, not always, the present governor of the Reserve Bank of India.
I'll be delighted to offer Maggi back to its rightful owner, which is the consumer.
From Chennai to Mumbai to New Delhi, it was a busy day for corporate leaders, and we have all the big guns right here for you on India Business Hour. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us. Hi, Surabhi.
Hi, Shireen. Great to have you in the Mumbai studio.
Yeah, it's good to be back here.
Absolutely. And we've got a lot of ground to cover. All those cabinet decisions in New Delhi, the markets in Mumbai, the investor meet in Chennai, and of course, China.
Absolutely. But let's get right down to it. The big story, of course, of the day is the trading action. A spectacular surge in Tokyo, which lifted sentiment pretty much across Asia, and the Indian markets were no exception. The bulls marching forward for the second day running, helping the indices reclaim crucial levels. The Nifty gained about 130 points, back up above the 7,800 mark. The Sensex put on 400. It's now inching closer to the 26,000 level. And mid-caps made up for yesterday's underperformance with a rally coming in today as well. So the market's looking good on the back of global cues especially the news coming in from Tokyo. But the top story tonight, the wait for the goods and services tax is now going to be longer. The finance minister today has very categorically stated that the government will prorogue the monsoon session of Parliament, so that pretty much lays to rest the possibility of a special session. The Congress remains adamant and has today listed out its objections to the GST bill in its current form, a reiteration of its objections. The Congress says it's not in favor of the 1% interstate tax. They also want a ceiling on the revenue neutral rate, which they believe should be 18%. The Congress also wants the centre's share in the GST Council to come down to 25%, among other demands. So with no consensus in sight, the April 1st, 2016 deadline is clearly under threat.
हमारी प्राथमिकता देश का विकास है और सरकार की ओर से हम इसके लिए प्रयास करते रहेंगे और इस राजनीतिक वास्तविकता को मद्देनजर रखते हुए आज कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन पार्लियामेंट्री अफेयर्स की मीटिंग हुई अभी मंत्रिपरिषद की मीटिंग के बाद तो उसमें तय ये किया कि फिलहाल राष्ट्रपति जी को ये सिफारिश की जाए कि मॉनसून सेशन को परोख किया जाए.
So the monsoon session is over and done with, and now the GST bill can only see the light of the day in the winter session of Parliament, and that, of course, if there is consensus between the government and the Congress party. Now, days after allowing telecom companies to share their spectrum, the cabinet today waved the green flag to let them trade it as well. This has been a long-standing demand of telecom companies, and it will help them monetize the spectrum that is not being utilized. The companies will have to inform the government 45 days in advance before trading their spectrum. A 1% trading fee will also be levied. That hasn't gone down too well. Telecom company stocks, of course, up and about in trade today after that move was announced. As I mentioned, it was a long-anticipated decision. Reliance Communication, look at that stock, higher by about 12% as the street expects the company to sell some of its airwaves. In a press conference that followed the announcement, the Telecom Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad explained the spectrum trading rules. Separately, industries also reacted, welcoming the move.
ट्रेडिंग और शेयरिंग के आने के बाद जो सबसे बड़ा फायदा होने वाला है कि जो कॉन्टिगुअस स्पेक्ट्रम को लेकर दिक्कत होती थी तो उसको सुविधा मिलेगी ताकि सर्विस अच्छी होगी. और दूसरा, ऐसे बहुत सारे प्लेयर्स जिन्होंने स्पेक्ट्रम लिया था लेकिन कंज्यूमर बेस नहीं बढ़ा सके, तो देयर स्पेक्ट्रम हैज बिकम ए डेड एसेट, तो उसका उपयोग कर सके, तो ये बहुत ही रेवोल्यूशनरी स्टेप है.
Overall, this will be benefiting the industry because industry was looking for better spectrum management. When you are able to share your resources, you're always able to give better service to your customers. So, spectrum sharing guidelines came 15 days back, and already discussions started with among the operators. We are also in discussion with a few of them. But then everybody wanted to have a very clear roadmap, when the trading is going to come, what are the steps in that. So now everything is clear. So I'm very sure you will see in very short time tie-ups happening, people pooling in their resources and give better service to their customers.
All right, that's industry reacting. Let's get in Rima, who's joining in with more details on those spectrum trading norms that we've seen today. Rima, we know that there are several payouts, and there's that 1% transaction fee which is going to be levied on the buyer. But overall, whom does this benefit?
In an important decision for the telecom sector, the cabinet today has approved spectrum trading norms by which a telecom operator can buy or sell airwaves. However, a few salient features, only liberalized spectrum can be used, which means spectrum which is given at administered prices cannot be traded. Secondly, it appears that it will be a bilateral transaction between a buyer and seller, which means only these two entities will decide the price. A telco can enter into a trading agreement by giving the government 45 days of advance notice. Now, overall, spectrum trading is positive for the sector because it will aid in consolidation. It will allow efficient use of spectrum. So, of the players, it appears that only the big ones like Bharti, Idea, Vodafone, Jio would be potential buyers of spectrum, while all the others will be selective sellers, which means, for instance, if Aircel or Reliance Communication have unutilized spectrum, then they would be interested in selling or trading it. The question is, will spectrum trading make M&A redundant to some extent? Because now you have an option to go ahead and buy spectrum without taking on the attending debt which is there in most of the telecom operators. And trading will also help the sellers to get the highest possible price for the spectrum. So, the question is, when you have trading as an option, will M&A really take off? And the other thing is, a little bit of a limiting factor could be the fee structure. Right now, the buyer has to pay a 1% transaction value of the market price, whichever is higher. So that is not going to be much of a problem. It's the seller for whom the transaction fee will be used to calculate their AGR or adjusted gross revenue, on which the government will charge a license fee as well as spectrum usage charge. License fee is 8%, spectrum usage charge is roughly 5%, which means 13% of the transaction value will go to the government. So this fee structure reduces the attractiveness of spectrum trading. But overall, net, all things considered, it's still a positive.
All right, Rima, many thanks for that. Well, staying with telecom, the onset of spectrum trading could perhaps help combat the problem of call drops. In fact, the new chairman of TRAI, R.S. Sharma, met telecom operators in the capital today. This after the regulator conducted a customer satisfaction survey, which almost all telecom companies failed. The TRAI chief has said that a new test will be conducted in 2 weeks.
We apprised them of the results of those drive tests, and it is very clear from those results that except one or maybe two operators, everybody was falling short of the prescribed standards. And these were standards of call drops, of other kinds of, service-related, quality of service-related parameters.
TRAI chief, and while we are on the issue of telcos, Telecom major Bharti Airtel and Malaysia-based Axiata Group have begun talks to merge their operations in Bangladesh to create the second largest operator in the country. In a joint statement, both companies have said that they have entered into an exclusive discussion to explore the possibility of combining their telecom businesses. The statement, however, added that there is no certainty that this discussion will lead to the execution of binding definitive agreements between the two parties. Staying with the decisions taken by the Cabinet today, in a bid to stem India's insatiable appetite for gold, the Cabinet has announced a monetization and bond scheme. Now, here is how it works. People can buy gold bonds, which will earn interest unlike physical gold. RBI will issue these bonds. The aim of the gold monetization scheme is to channelize idle gold assets. This was announced in the last budget presented by the Finance Minister. And here he is explaining how this scheme will work, and then we'll get you the details.
आज मंत्रिपरिषद ने सॉवरेन गोल्ड बॉन्ड स्कीम को अप्रूव किया है। इस स्कीम के तहत एक्चुअल सोना खरीदने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, गोल्ड बॉन्ड्स खरीदे जा सकते हैं।
The idle gold has to be put into productive use. And number two, financial savings, instrument of financial savings to replace gold as an instrument of savings. These are the two major objects of the schemes. In the case of gold bond scheme, the investment is made in cash, but the bond would be denominated in terms of grams of gold. In the case of gold monetization scheme also, a gold monetization account would be opened where, the individuals are required to deposit their certain quantum of gold.
Well, that was the former Revenue Secretary and now the Economic Affairs Secretary taking us through the gold monetization scheme. And for more details, Sapna is joining us to explain how the gold bond and the monetization scheme will work. Sapna, how will the government set the interest rate? And we understand tax exemption will also be on offer to lure customers. So what are you picking up?
Well, first off, there are no clear projections or estimates as to how much the government plans to mobilize through the gold monetization scheme, or how much money they are expecting to come in via the gold bond scheme, which can be used to reduce the government's borrowing in the current financial year. Also, apart from this, the date of notification is yet to be declared as to when the schemes will actually roll out. So that is something that we have to wait and watch for. Apart from this, in terms of both the schemes, the fluctuation on gold price, the risk of fluctuation of gold price will be there both on investors as well as for the government. Of course, if gold prices increase, that's good for the investor, but the government may have to make good that difference. And there's the gold reserve fund which has been set up for that, but there will be no hedging on that account. So this is something both the investors, the investors have to keep in mind. Of course, the government is totally ready on that account. Apart from this, on the GMS, the deposits can be, the tenure is very varying, 1 to 15 years. Anything beyond 3 years, here the redemption will happen in rupees, as well as the interest rates will have to be set by the government later on, or rather in consultation with the Reserve Bank of India. Quickly, in terms of the KYC norms for both the schemes, they're going to be same, stringent, no relaxation on that front. But, and also the schemes cannot be used for any kind of money laundering. The government's message is very clear. In terms of the tax breaks, well, they're there on both accounts. Tax breaks will be there for GMS, also for GBS, but for GBS, the government will, bring in an amendment in the coming budget. They will change the Income Tax Act to offer indexation benefits and also exemption from long-term capital gains tax on GBS.
All right, Sapna, thank you so much for that. Well, that's not all. The Cabinet has also approved the National Offshore Wind Energy Policy, which will provide the roadmap for the setting up of wind farms in the seas around the Indian coast. Speaking to Network 18, Union Power Minister Piyush Goyal said that the government has already identified certain areas where these offshore wind farms can be set up.
Renewable energy, देश भर में सौर ऊर्जा, विंड एनर्जी दोनों के लिए तो प्रोत्साहन हम दे ही रहे हैं। 1,75,000 मेगावाट का लक्ष्य है। साथ ही साथ जो इतना बड़ा कोस्टलाइन है भारत का और उसकी जो इकोनॉमिक जोन रहती है, उसके अंतर्गत 200 माइल तक, नॉटिकल माइल तक जो हिस्सा भारत के साथ जुड़ा रहता है, उसमें जब एक प्रिलिमिनरी स्टडीज की तो अनुमान मिला कि गुजरात में लगभग 1 लाख मेगावाट, तमिलनाडु के बाहर कोस्टलाइन पे समुंदर के अंदर 60,000 मेगावाट, अगर ये दो राज्यों में है तो और स्वाभाविक है और जगह भी मिलेगा।
All right, that was the Power Minister. Now, in a bid to safeguard domestic steel makers from cheap Chinese imports, the government is mulling yet another hike in duty, this time an additional duty. The Director General of Safeguards has recommended a duty of 20% for 200 days on select steel products. The Commerce Secretary-headed Safeguard Board will now be examining these recommendations, and Commerce Minister Nirmala Sitharaman promised action if they find evidence on steel dumping.
If there are enough research-based information, facts, which can be established, and a proof that there is indeed some kind of a dumping happening, the Commerce Ministry can actually take steps under anti-dumping. So that is something which is a bit of a time-consuming exercise, but we need to have to collect the relevant facts for it and then establish it for taking action.
And this was along the expected lines, because remember, this was a matter that was even brought up at the Prime Minister's meeting yesterday. And even if you go by the DGFT circular very clearly says that prima facie there seems to be evidence of dumping, but of course the final call on imposition of the safeguard duty will have to be taken by the Safeguard Board. Now, the Prime Minister himself may have made an earnest appeal to India Inc. just yesterday, asking them to take more risks and pump up investments, but the mood in India Inc. is cautious, with investors remaining skeptical of the overall demand environment. Nentara, who has been at the Economist India conference, joins us now with all the details. Nentara, the Prime Minister's pep talk not helping matters?
24 hours after the Prime Minister told the private sector to hike the capex cycle, companies just don't seem enthused enough. For example, Standard Chartered Bank's Managing Director for South Asia tells CNBC-TV18 that's not going to be possible until the banking system gains strength and that the company's balance sheets are too over-leveraged for them to actually hike the capex cycles. Kiran Majumdar-Shaw of Biocon says a higher capex cycle will also mean that companies will want tax breaks and government incentives.
From the MNC perspective, there is huge amount of interest in investing in India, and we do see activity over there. In the Indian corporate sector right now, we haven't yet seen that pick up. And that's primarily because the larger Indian corporates are leveraged. Till that leverage issue gets sorted out, I don't think the domestic industry is going to be in a position to invest as much as it ought to or potentially can. So this is going to be slower than the MNC side on a relative basis.
There has been a bit of a flip-flop approach to policies.
Can you highlight that with a few examples? What is this flip-flop?
Taxation being one of them. Like, you heard you saw what happened to MACT and FIIs. And you saw that initially the indication was that there would be no tax terrorism. And you have to be very decisive about what you're saying. The domestic industry is challenged. It is, financially stressed. And I think, they would like to see a lot more, either incentives or enablers to really make these big investments that are required today.
The Finance Minister, industrialists, they've all been pressing on the RBI Governor to cut rates. Today, one also got a sense that even if the Governor were to cut rates on the 29th of September or before that or after that, perhaps it won't do much to hike demand.
Of course, if they do that, it can't harm, it's fine, but I'm not so certain that that should be a thing. And in my kinds of industry, infrastructure is different, but my kinds of industry, that's the least important thing for companies. It's not at all important. It's important for our customer, but so be it.
If you carefully read the last monetary policy statement, it maintains that RBI is continuing with its accommodative stance.
Certainly, I'm not expecting a very significant cut, no.
Not or 25 basis points, would that be?
I don't know. 25 basis points as a signaling thing may be an important move for the RBI. I think in Jackson Hole he clarified that who said that they are done with cutting rates. So, but as I said, my assessment is that they will make haste slowly.
There you go, the sense one gets is impatience is beginning to creep in, and even if the Prime Minister wants the capex cycle to go up, a lot more needs to be done for the domestic companies to buy into the India story.
All right, that was Nayanthara at that event. But moving on, 16,000 kilometers away from India, Hero MotoCorp's passion was in full splendor when it inaugurated its first global manufacturing plant in Corca, Colombia. Incidentally, this plant is the first manufacturing facility by any Indian two-wheeler company in Latin America, built at a project cost of $70 million. The plant has an installed capacity of 80,000 units per annum, and this would increase to 150,000 units in the next phase. CNBC-TV18's Farah Bukwala-Vora, who's in Colombia, caught up with the chairman of Hero MotoCorp at the plant and started off by asking him just how aggressive Hero MotoCorp would be in a market in which its rival Bajaj Auto already has a well-established presence.
We launched last November, December with 6 products. We've already added 2 more. We added the 9th product today into the market, the new scooter, which is the first global launch from Hero. So clearly we have very aggressive sales and marketing plans to get a much higher market share in this market.
What kind of monthly sales are you expecting from this plant?
The current installed capacity is 80,000 units for this plant, and in 2 shifts. And I believe that we will very soon reach this capacity, and then we'll have to go into our expansion phase to take it up to 150,000.
Okay. You've also talked about servicing other Latin American markets, in and around Colombia. What geographies would those be? Which geographies are beginning to show potential?
Let me say that we are already selling into a lot of the Central American countries: Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Panama. We are selling into Peru, into Ecuador. We are starting sales into Bolivia very soon, Dominican Republic. We plan to enter the Caribbean markets. So all these markets are in very close proximity to Colombia, and most of the models manufactured in this plant will be able to go into these markets.
All right. And in you've talked about the fact that you're looking at building up your brand here. Apart from this initiative of local manufacturing, what else are you doing in terms of your advertising and marketing strategy to be able to build a brand? Because you've also spoken about the fact that consumers already recognize the brand in its erstwhile form of Hero Honda.
So as brand Hero, as Hero MotoCorp in India, we are very strong with brand building. We are bringing some of that expertise here into this market. Our association with sporting activities, our association with youth, our association with entertainment. So a lot of those marketing initiatives have already been launched, and I'm very confident that very soon brand Hero will be as recognizable here in Colombia as it is in India.
Well, that's Pavan Munjali in conversation with CNBC-TV18's Farah Bukwala in Colombia, where Hero Motor has just inaugurated its first facility, hoping to cater to the export market, especially in the LATAM and Central American regions from that facility. Now, the summer Davos has kicked off in China's Dalian, and unlike previous years, there's an uneasy nervousness among investors. The world's second largest economy is showing signs of a slowdown, and the stock market is sputtering. Jeff Cutmore reports from Dalian that most investors are hoping for more measures from the Chinese government to soothe some frayed nerves.
In spite of the better tone for Asian markets in the last 48 hours, here at the World Economic Forum in Dalian, there is some nervousness about the growth that China is likely to achieve this year. The recent slew of data we've seen suggests that both demand domestically is slowing and there is some weakness in terms of global demand for Chinese products, which perhaps explains why we've seen from the Finance Ministry fresh announcements of fiscal stimulus, and there is an expectation here on the ground in Dalian that we will see some further monetary stimulus from the People's Bank of China within coming days.
I do think that the time is ripe for the central policy makers to put together some, I call acupuncture-style stimulus, not massive stimulus, but acupuncture-style stimulus to restart the economy.
In the short term, we can expect China to slow down, and we can expect to see that reflected in the labor markets in terms of wage inflation and unemployment and things like that. But over the long term, however, this is still a huge economy that is going through a massive transformation with a very clear idea of how they wish to shift their industrial base and how they wish to grow the middle class, how they wish to adapt their educational system to those needs.
Having said all that, there are concerns, particularly among World Bank economists, that growth globally is weak and China will continue to suffer from that. I spoke with Bert Hoffman, country director for China.
The key challenge for China is to continue this rebalancing of the economy. The credit-driven economy builds up vulnerabilities, and credit to GDP is already quite high for a higher middle-income country such as China. So easing out of that, continues to ease out of that, is the most important thing to watch.
The question many investors will have to ask themselves, though, are we seeing a dead cat bounce here? What more will the Chinese government give in terms of policies to stabilize this current spate of uncertainty? This is Jeff Cutmore at the World Economic Forum in Dalian.
Well, a mammoth rally at least today in the Chinese and the Japanese markets. Let's see what the next couple of days bring. But moving on to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Nestle India hopes to get Maggi noodles back on the shelves by the end of this year. Speaking to CNBC-TV18's Priya Sheth, the CEO of Nestle India, Suresh Narayanan, says the Swiss global FMCG major is moving fast to meet all the criteria set by the Bombay High Court in order to get the popular instant noodles brand back on the consumer shelves. Priya started off by asking him for a status check on the various tests that need to be in place before Maggi noodles is considered safe for consumption in the country.
We are now at a stage where we have under the orders of the Mumbai High Court going for a process of taking the relevant samples and sending them to the 3 accredited laboratories in conjunction with the FSSAI, doing the analysis, all clear. We go in for manufacturing, and if that also goes in for a round of analysis, again to the 3 laboratories, and if we are all clear on that as well, then I'll be delighted to offer Maggi back to its rightful owner, which is the consumer, hopefully by the end of this year.
Right, so if you could run us through what stage the testing is in, because I believe some part of the time period given by the Bombay High Court is already over.
Sure. Look, we have got the direction of the Honourable High Court in terms of taking now 5 samples of each of the variants. So that's about 30 samples per laboratory. This process will start because the sampling and the further process would be as per the FSSA guidelines. So this will be followed. And yes, the court has mandated a 6-week period for the completion of the entire testing methodology, and we hope to work towards that timeline.
Well, that's the new MD of Nestle India saying that the process of testing Maggi noodles as per the Bombay High Court's directive has started, and once that process is over and the all clear comes in, they are hopeful of bringing Maggi back on shelves by the end of the year. It's a Tamil Nadu government's way of wooing investors. Chief Minister J. Lalita inaugurated the 2-day Global Investors Meet today in the presence of some of the biggest names from India and the world. Commitments are already coming in. So while M&M, which already has a sizable presence in the state, has signed an MOU with the government to invest 2,000 crore rupees in the Mahindra Research Valley in Chennai, HCL has decided to make an investment of $1 billion in the state. Japanese two-wheeler major Yamaha has also announced announced its plans of setting up a third plant in Tamil Nadu. Giving Yamaha company is TVS Motors, which also plans to increase its existing operations at Hosur. And the Adani Group, which has been largely based out of Gujarat, has plans of investing up to 20,000 crore rupees in port and power projects in the state. Yes Bank has said it will set up an operation management and services delivery facility in Chennai, which will add about 9,000 jobs. Jude Saneth, who was at the summit, brings us the story.
The biggest vote of confidence for the industry came from the state government, with Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha announcing close to 42,000 acres of ready-to-occupy land in southern Tamil Nadu. This, of course, was coupled with the announcement of a 30-day clearance window for all industrial projects.
This re-establishes Tamil Nadu as a state that focuses on effective delivery without the accompanying hype. Domestic and foreign investors have enthusiastically endorsed the very favorable investment climate in the state.
Tamil Nadu, on top of it, has outstanding road connectivity, more than 200,000 kilometers. So most of our suppliers are outside of Chennai. So we get all our supplies in time, and they might have smaller warehouses here or last minute value addition. I don't think it is necessary to be in Chennai at all.
I am really encouraged by what I saw today and the commitment of the Chief Minister and the Tamil Nadu government to attracting investment, particularly in the automotive space. Already Tamil Nadu is a powerhouse here in India with regard to the automotive space. I think the opportunities are to really work hard in the area and continue to work hard in the export area, improving infrastructure around the ports to ensure that Tamil Nadu can move to the place where it should be, which is the #1 exporter of small cars, not just in India, but globally.
The biggest announcement of the day came from HCL, which will invest close to $1 billion in setting up of two facilities, one in Madurai and the other in Tirunelveli. This, of course, was followed by Yamaha, which at 1,600 crore will develop a two-wheeler manufacturing facility which will roll out close to 1.8 million two-wheelers per annum.
We will be investing, we'll be allocating a total of $1 billion over the next 5 years to develop the centers in Madurai and south of Madurai. And we will continue to grow in Kovai.
I would like 2,500 crores of investment I would like to make here. Any timeline? As soon as we keep getting permission. We have an 800 crores food processing plant proposal in Trichy. We are an all India company and we are looking for opportunities for investment everywhere. Okay. We don't have any borrowings. We have laid out a 25,000 crores of investment plan.
What's the total investment?
The book value of our current investment in Tamil Nadu is 2,400 crores.
So Tamil Nadu trying to woo investors. It's not the only state government that's trying to do that. Karnataka, West Bengal, Rajasthan, all lining up road shows to try and attract new investors. On that note, it's time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching.